Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the Personal Finances Workshop. We're so excited to have you join us. My name is Alina. I'm a communication specialist lead here at WorkPlus. I am a senior at ASU studying communication and fashion, and I've worked here at WorkPlus for about 2 years. And I'm so excited to introduce our speaker, Emily Schwartz, today. So, Emily is a financial educator and longtime associate at MidFirst Bank. Today, she is going to talk to us about budgeting, saving, understanding credit. This session is this session is designed to equip us with practical strategies to take control of our financial knowledge. That being said, Emily, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you everybody for showing up today. Look at how many people care about money. Oh my gosh. Who would have thought? I love it. So yeah, today we're going to talk about mastering personal finance. Now, I am going to say there are three different topics that we're going to hit today. We're going to talk about budgeting. We're going to talk about credit and loans, and we're also going to be talking about investing. Now, I put them in this order for a reason, okay? Budgeting is the foundation because budgeting is the here's my bank account, here's how I organize it, here's how I look at money coming in and my money coming out and everything like that. That is the foundation. I know y'all don't want to do that because I get questions about investing all the time. People are like, yeah, I don't want a budget. Could you just make me rich? Could you make me rich tomorrow? No, no, I cannot. But we are going to build up to that. All right. Number two is basically about how to handle other people's money. That's about credit, student loans, what a credit score even is. What is that all about? And then we are going to talk a little bit about investing and what that even means when people talk about it. All right. So those are the three things we're going to hit today. Starting off strong with budgeting. I don't know how many of you have a budget of your own, but I think it's really important to kind of back up a little bit before we jump right into budgeting and look at how your money's even organized to begin with. Because some people, have had their own bank account and their own money coming in and out of it for a really long time. And some people that's kind of brand new. Um, but there's really kind of two basic flavors of bank accounts, right? You got your checking account, which is built to pay for stuff, and your savings account, which is built to literally not pay for stuff, like to not spend it. Now, why it is still called a checking account is beyond my comprehension. Nobody asked me. Nobody writes checks anymore. We should call it a spend account, a spending account. When they ask me and we can get it changed, you'll know. They'll be like, they finally asked Emily Schwartz. The banking industry as a whole finally called her up. You just wait. Okay. Checking. This is where money moves around a lot. This is where we pay for things. You have a debit card, you're tapping your debit card, it's coming out of your checking. You're Venmoing someone, you're Zelling someone, it's usually coming out of your checking, okay? This is where you put the money you want to spend. Folks, if you have money in your checking account and you are actively hoping to not spend it, don't put it there. Put it in the other one. Okay. Put it in the savings account. This is where you put money that stays put. You're earning a little bit of interest on your money, or you're saving up for either your short or your long term. Um, that's where that money goes. So I know it's like double the accounts to worry about, but folks, you got to trust me. You got to start managing both, even if you don't feel like you need to. Right now, in this moment in college, you're going to have to do it in 1, 2, 3, 4 years whenever you graduate, right? So you might as well just start doing it now. Okay. Now I do want to talk about that interest because this is a very topical thing right now with interest rates. We've seen interest rates go up recently, and you might have heard in the news a couple weeks ago, interest rates got cut. What the heck does that mean? Let me show you. Okay. Let's pretend that uh, I gave every single person at ASU $500, which would make me the coolest person ever to walk the planet. To be clear, that's not happening, but let's just pretend for funsies. Everybody's getting $500. And let's pretend you're all super duper responsible and you are going to go put that money in the bank. Okay. So you've got now the bank has a lot of money. Now let's pretend that one of you, let's choose Emily Simon because she's right there and has an amazing name, if I do say so myself, and initials. Look at you, Emily. We got the E rocking the ES over here. Anyway, I digress. So we let's pretend that Emily wants to go buy a car, and she's like, I would like to go borrow some money from the bank to do that. So Emily walks into the bank. I say, yeah, absolutely, Emily, here's $40,000. Go buy a car because it's totally that easy. So now Emily has $40,000. Now, is that money free to her? It is not free. She has to pay me back, and she has to pay me back with extra. So it's not just the $40,000, it's $40,000 plus interest. Now, Emily, totally upstanding citizen. She made all those payments on time. Maybe she took out a loan for 3 years or something. I don't know. I've got all her money back plus her extra. Now, what am I going to do with that extra? Well, some of it I'm going to keep because I'm a business and that's how my business makes money. Fry's grocery store makes money by selling bread and bananas. Banks sell money. That's how they make money. They make money by selling money, just like shoe stores make money by selling shoes, blah, 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 blah. But I'm not going to keep all of it because the rest of it, I'm going to chop it up into a million little pieces and I'm going to give some to you, some to you, some to you, some to you, some to everybody who has a deposit at the bank because I would not have had money to lend to Emily if we didn't have deposits at the bank. Now, what could Emily not do? It's a weird sentence. What could she not do that would kind of mess up the system? She could miss her payments, right? That's why I can't just lend money to any person who walks into the bank with my same first name and initials. I need to ask a lot of questions. So that's why you have to have applications. They're going to be like, okay, have you ever borrowed money in the past? Do you have a job? How much do you have? That's why that process exists because we have to be pretty sure that you're trustworthy and you're going to pay this money back because it's not our money, it's everybody else's money that we're lending out. If Emily is paying a lot of interest on her loan, anybody with a savings account at the bank is going to get more money. Okay. If Emily's loan is cheaper for her, that's good news for Emily, but that means that her interest that she's being paid on her savings account is also going to be less. So you can watch this happen with your eyeballs because in the past couple of years, loans have been getting more and more expensive, which stinks for people who need loans. But people who have savings accounts at the banks are like, hey, well, that's kind of cool. Look at this. I'm getting paid more money. Now we're experiencing a shift. You're going to start to see them go down again because interest rates have been cut. And so Emily's car loan is going to start to get cheaper. That's pretty cool. Cool for Emily. But then now you're going to see your interest on your bank account going down too. So when that happens, you could be like, well, at least Emily is getting a cheaper car loan. That's how those things work. Now, I say all that so that you can kind of understand how the banking system works and how money gets organized, because that's an important process of then this next thing that we're going to talk about, which is the bucket system of budgeting. This is the easiest way, guys, I can possibly explain it. I've seen people who do budgets that are like a million different lines long and a million different categories. Hey, that's great. If that's your jam, boom, do it. This is just kind of like the easiest, biggest way I can describe it. And then you can make it within this as complicated as you want. Fixed expenses, variable expenses, unplanned expenses, and saving. Those are the four. Fixed expenses, things that don't change. Variable expenses, things that do change. Unplanned, the things you don't know about. And saving, we know what that is. I can tell you which bucket people leave off. I could tell you hands down which bucket. It's the unplanned. People know they need to save. They might not love it, but like they do it. The unplanned, people will show me their budget and they'll be like, this is how much money I have to spend and this is how much I'm going to spend and blah, blah, blah. And I say, okay, what about when things go wrong? And they're like, well, I am just kind of hoping that it won't. Folks, listen to me. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm a fortune teller. In the next 6 months, you are going to have an unplanned expense in your life. Like it's going to happen. And when it happens, you can be like, oh man, that lady knew. She knew it was going to happen. Or you don't know what it is yet. It's going to be like a fun little surprise you didn't want. But it's going to happen, so you have to plan for it to happen. All right, fixed, variable, unplanned savings. So where college students struggle the most, just in my experience talking to students, it's the other three buckets. Fixed expenses in college, pretty straightforward. Maybe you've got scholarships paying for your, fixed, maybe you're like living on campus, or maybe it's, the tuition that's getting covered. In my experience, I've seen that it's the other three buckets that throw people off. So that's why we're going to focus on those. Okay. What you need to do is come up with a number based on how much you have at your job, how much you might have in scholarships and grants or whatever. You got to squish all that money together and see how much do you have to spend on just staying alive every week or every month. Whether you do a weekly budget or a monthly budget is totally up to you. I will say, if you've never done a budget ever in your life, you might like doing a weekly budget. And I only say that because you check in more frequently with a weekly budget. Now, I don't think that's sustainable in the long term because there's a lot of bills we pay monthly. But just for me, if it's a monthly budget and you only check in at the end of the month and you've done 2 months and you realize you're failing, well, you've been failing for 60 days, right? And you haven't had a check in. So figure out what you have to spend every week. I don't know if you've got $5,000 a semester, maybe that's 300 a week. I don't know your life, but you should know your life. Okay. So you figure out what that number is and then divide it in the buckets accordingly. Here's why I like this. Because that variable expense bucket, that 230, it can change as long as it doesn't overflow the bucket. How you decide to make up the bucket can change. This is where a lot of type A super smart college students like y'all selves, okay, struggle because they'll be like, Emily, excuse me, I needed a haircut this month, but like I didn't need one last month. So like, what do I do about that? Guys, you don't have time to worry about that minutia. Okay. You don't have time for that. Look at the bucket. Got a haircut? Cool. Guess what? You got to dine out less that month, okay? Depending on how high maintenance your hair situation is. Maybe your groceries were higher that month. Okay, well, your entertainment's got to be lower. I don't care what makes up the bucket as long as it doesn't overflow. The bucket's going to change week to week, month to month, and that's okay. Now, maybe that's not okay with you. Maybe you are like, absolutely not, Emily. I need a budget that has a million lines. Hey, cool. You do you. I'm just saying this is the basic structure, then you can make it as complicated or not as you want within the bucket. The only way this works, I don't care whether you use a bucket or the spreadsheets, like I don't care how you do it. The only way this works is if you then track your expenses. So you can't really say, hey, I'm going to spend $200 on variable expenses this week and then just kind of hope it happens. You have to track your expenses. Now, the easiest way to do that is with an expense tracking app. There are many of them. Some are free. Well, a decreasingly common number of them are free. I'll be real with you. But some of them, are monthly or yearly that you can pay. They all kind of work the same. You hook them up to your bank account and then they kind of say, hey, did you know you spent this much on gas this week? And you're like, I did not know that. Wow, how painful. Maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you want to just write it down. Guys, there's no shame in that, okay? If someone calls you a grandma for, using a paper and pencil, just be like, that's right. AARP right here, grandma status, because it doesn't matter as long as it works, okay? Maybe you don't have enough expenses to justify a big old app. That's cool. Write it down. Maybe you're a spreadsheet person. I don't know which one of you is the spreadsheet person in this group, but there's always one, okay? I actually kind of like doing a spreadsheet because the manually entering it, like you have to look in your bank statement and go, okay, so I, bought this at Target, I spent this much at Target on this date. I kind of like that because it keeps you involved in your money on a day-to-day basis more than if you're just letting the app do it. I also think if you've done a spreadsheet, it's easier to then decide what kind of app you want to use because you know what you're looking for. You're like, oh, I've done this manually. The thing I'm looking for is something that's going to tell me, these 10 categories or whatever. That's just me. I don't care how you do it. At the end of the month or at the end of the week, you should be able to say, this is where my money went. That is the goal with budgeting. And then once you do that, you can decide, okay, was my budget realistic? Or do I need to change my budget? Or do I need to change my behavior? Those are the two levers you can change, guys. Either change your budget or your behavior. That's it. Those are the two things. As you get closer to graduation, now your budget's going to look different when you graduate. because college, you're in this like weird time, okay? Like nobody ever again in your life is going to come to you like in the beginning of the fall and be like, I demand $30,000. Well, I don't actually, I shouldn't say that. I don't know what crazy lives you're going to lead, but that's it's different. It's weird. Hopefully, we're going to get on a more kind of, okay, I kind of pay this same amount every month, blah, blah, blah. People always ask me to show them like what a typical breakdown is, and that's really frustrating because, or not frustrating, it's difficult because there is no typical. So what I'm going to show you instead is what most people's biggest category is. And you'll see it, housing. Where you choose to live generally is going to be your biggest chunk of your money. Now, if you have kids, they're going to take up a ton of money. Actually, just take up the whole pie. You don't get a pie anymore. It's your kid's pie. The transportation is going to take up a chunk. Debt could take up a ton, but housing is going to be a big chunk. So how can you use that information proactively? Well, they say that if you're spending about 30% of your income on housing, that gives you enough extra money to spend on everything else. So that's kind of our goal. You could do a little bit of math, guys, 4 minutes of math and start to figure out what that means for your future. So all you got to do, you pick a job and a city. So maybe you're like, I'm going to be an engineer. I haven't really decided what flavor, but let's maybe call it a mechanical engineer. And I've got family in Philadelphia, so I'm thinking I'm going to move back there. Great. Mechanical engineer, Philadelphia. You can then Google what's the average starting salary of that career in that city. So I did that for you. It's about $75,000 to $80,000. I wanted to aim lower so that we were more conservative. So let's call it $75,000. That means 30% of that number, 22.5, that would be our yearly housing cost. Now, we don't pay housing yearly though, right? That's weird. So you have to divide that by 12, which means your monthly, like if you could find a place to live for $1,800 a month, that is sustainable. Okay. Is that realistic? Well, I spent an extra 1 minute looking on the internet to see if that was sustainable. And yeah, now look, I don't know Philadelphia. I don't know where the mechanical engineer jobs are, but like this was like the third option down when I entered my search criteria. It exists. Based on this little bit of research, I feel like yeah, I think this is sustainable. This salary in this city, I think I'm going to be able to find a place where I could live and have enough money for everything. Maybe you do this and you're like, oh, this is actually really tough. I'm living in a very high expense city and I'm in a lower paying job. So now maybe I need to set my realistic expectations and I have to make sure I'm keeping my debt low so I have enough money to be able to afford that living situation. Maybe I know I'm going to have a roommate when I graduate. Maybe I know I'm going to have to live outside the city and commute into the city because it's cheaper that way. Couple of minutes of math and it can really help you see what your budget might look like, not just now, but in the future. Finally, when you're making that budget, remember I was talking about the importance of fixed versus variable costs, guys? I'm kind of obsessed with these percentages because when people feel financially secure, it's not just because they make a ton of money that they feel financially secure. To be clear, that helps, okay? But the part of it that makes them feel secure is that their fixed costs, the things that come out of their paycheck like automatically, don't take up more than half of their salary. So you, in theory, you could be a surgeon making a ton of money, but if your fixed costs take up 80 or 90% of that salary, you're still going to feel really stressed. Even though you're making a ton of money, you need to lower those fixed costs. So that's just kind of a number that is helpful, I think, to have in mind when you're starting to look at future salaries and what different things cost. Those fixed costs, keeping those low is what's going to keep your stress low also. Because folks, there are only two money solutions to any budgeting problem, all right? If your budget ain't working, you either need to spend less or get more. Those are the only two choices. People spend their whole lifetime looking for the third option. I don't know what to tell you. There's nothing out there, right? Spend less or get more, usually together. I'll be real with you. It usually is together. We focus a lot on spend less, not because it's the end all be all, it's just easier. That's the only reason. That's the only reason all these blogs and things are like, oh, don't go to Starbucks and oh, don't go out to lunch. It's only because it's easier. Getting more, advocating for yourself at your job. Maybe you're making sure you have the right job skills that are going to be good in this market. Maybe you're picking up a side hustle. Maybe you're investing money. Like, get more is also important. It's just a little harder to do, but doesn't mean it's not important. All right, I'm going to pause and see if there's any. Oh, that was Abby's comment in the chat. Yeah, see if there's any questions about budgeting before we move on to credit, or you can save them to the end. It really does not matter to me. Seeing nothing, I will move on, but feel free to drop in there, as we go. All right, let's talk about credit and loans. I get asked all the time, Emily, like, when should I have a credit card? And are credit cards good? Are they bad? Folks, credit cards are a tool, just like anything else is a tool. How you use it depends whether is gonna dictate whether it's gonna help you or not help you. So we know how credit cards work, right? They're not hooked up to our bank account. So if you have a credit card and you go tap your credit card at Chipotle across the street, you're not actually paying for the Chipotle. Visa is paying for the Chipotle, and Visa is going to send you a little bill at the end of the month that was like, wow, you spent $250 at Chipotle this month. You like fajitas much? Okay. They probably won't add that little judgy part, but like maybe, I don't know. Maybe there's some person at Visa going, huh, look at this person. They need to lay off the carnitas. What is happening? So you get that bill. You get that bill. If you get the bill and you're like, darn right, $250 at Chipotle, here you go. Here's your $250, the whole thing, and you pay the whole thing on time. That's the end of the story. You only owe $250. You do not owe a penny more. You don't owe any interest. It's done. You borrowed the money and then you paid it back. If you get the bill, let's pretend it's not Chipotle. Let's pretend it's Chipotle and 4 new tires. Because like, woo, that's exciting. You get the bill and you can't pay the whole thing. Visa's going to say, okay, well, instead of paying the whole thing, just pay this little amount. We call that a minimum payment. Just pay this minimum amount and we'll charge you interest on the rest of it until the whole thing's paid off. So that is not great, because when I say interest, guys, it's a lot of interest, all right? And it's going to take you a long time to pay that off. Your bank account, your wallet is not going to be happy with you. Now, the silver lining of the number 2 option is that you still get to say you're someone who pays things off on time. If someone said, hey, does Emily Schwartz pay her bills on time? It does not matter whether I'm paying the whole Chipotle bill or the minimum payments and paying a ton of interest. As long as I am making that minimum payment, I get to say, yes, I pay my bills on time. Unless I go to the third option. The third option is like the worst of both worlds, okay? In the third option, I get the bill. I don't pay the whole thing. I don't pay the minimum. I don't pay it at all. I get the bill. I throw it in the trash. Not only are you being charged a bunch of fees and interest and blah, 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 but now you don't even get to say you're somebody who pays your stuff on time. So that's when we start to affect our credit. Sometimes people think, oh, paying interest on a credit card hurts my credit reputation. It does not. It hurts your wallet. It does not hurt your credit reputation. It's only when you start not paying it, right? I'm going to show you quickly both of these scenarios just so you can kind of understand how it works. So the number 2 scenario, let's pretend you had some car repair. So man, you could spend $1,500 just blink of an eye at the car repair place, okay? $1,500, and let's say it's at a 21% interest rate. So you get the bill, absolutely you can't pay the $1,500, but Visa says, hey, you know what, can you pay 30? And you're like, yeah, I can pay 30. At $30 a month, it's going to take you 10 years to pay that off, because it's not just, hey, here's $1,500 and I pay. The finish line keeps moving because you keep getting charged interest. You pay a little bit and you owe a little bit more because of the interest. And you pay a little bit, but you owe a little bit more because of the interest. It's going to take 10 years. You'll have paid over $2,000 in interest, wowzers, okay, that will equal over $3,500, more than double the original car repair. So when you hear people say they are stuck in credit card debt, this is what they mean. Something people don't realize, it's not like you only have two options. Some people think, oh, so you mean I pay the whole thing or the minimum? No, there's infinite in between options. Okay, you don't have 1,500, but do you have 100? Maybe you have 70 more dollars than the minimum. Look what it does to these other numbers. Wow. Instead of 10 years, now you're paying it off in 1.5. Instead of 2,000 something in interest, you're paying 200 something in interest. Your total cost, way lower. People don't know it's an option because it's not like you get the credit card bill and it doesn't say, here's the minimum payment, but you should really pay more because it's in your best interest and you'll pay less interest over time. You just have to know to do that. You just have to know to do that. So hopefully you only put on a credit card what you can pay off at the end of the month. But if you don't, hopefully you're paying as much as you can so that you owe as little interest as possible. In the third option, if you don't pay it anything at all, it's going to start to hurt your credit reputation. That's what people talk about, their credit score and their credit report. Okay, and that does follow you for a while. Common misconception, some people think it's the banks that collect all this information. They actually don't. Apartment owners and banks and people, we look at your credit, but we're not the ones collecting your credit. These folks do that. These are the information collectors. We call them the credit bureaus. TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian are the three biggest ones, so that's the ones we talk about. They keep track of all your stuff, and then they spit out a score for you. So they're like, Emily Schwartz has a student loan. Oh, she paid it on time. Oh, now she didn't pay it on time. Now she has a credit card. She paid that on time, blah, blah, blah. And they take all that information, they stick it all together, and they give you a score from 300 to 850. If you've got a credit score in the low 700s, you're doing great. High fives all around. You're probably getting approved for your loans. You're probably getting approved for your apartment rentals and things like that. It's when you start to get into the low sixes that people are like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to give you that loan today. Okay. So it's kind of like if we were to divide it into a grade, it's probably like the way I've divided it here. Those are not official things. Please don't go into a lender and say, yes, I have B+ credit as per Emily Schwartz. Like it's not an official thing, but it's just to kind of help you figure out, what it all means. How do they calculate it? Well, that's a good question. It's kind of like wanting to know your syllabus for your class, right? Hey, professor, how am I being graded on this? Well, here's how you're being graded. Look at what the biggest chunk is. Look what that biggest chunk is. Payment history. That is the thing that is cared about the most. Whether you pay on time or not, when you have a loan, whether you pay it on time or not is the biggest factor in your credit score. The other biggest factor is, are you maxing out your credit cards, right? So if you have a credit card that has like $1,000 limit on it, if you are consistently maxing out that card every single month, that doesn't look super good, all right? We want to see maybe you're not maxing out that credit card every month. So that would go into 30%. The other stuff, length of credit history, okay, how long have you had it? New credit? Are you applying for credit cards all the time? Different types of credit you have. Those are the smaller ones, but the two big ones are you paying on time and the amounts that you're owing every time. People ask me all the time, what age should I get a credit card? What age should I start building credit? Guys, it's not an age, okay? I have met 19-year-olds who are more than capable of having a card and only putting things on it that they know they can pay off and handling it, and it's totally fine. I have met 45-year-olds who absolutely can't do that. So it's not an age, it's just where you're at in life and how you're able to handle borrowed money. I will say, if you do want to start building credit, a lot of times people think they have to start with a credit card. You don't have to. You absolutely don't have to start building credit with a credit card. A lot of people do because it's the way to do it for free. Think about it like this. If you go buy a new car with a car loan and you pay that car loan back on time every month, you are building credit. You borrowed money, you're paying it back every month, you're demonstrating that you are financially responsible with a loan. But you had to spend a bunch of money on a car to do that. If instead you have a credit card and you still use your debit card for everything, except every time it's time to fill up that car, you take out the credit card, use it at the gas station, put a tank of gas in your car, put the credit card away, don't touch it again until you have to fill it up again. And then you get a statement at the end of the month from the credit card, and it literally only has gas on it because you still used your debit card for everything else, literally only has gas on the credit card. So you have like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 tanks of gas on there. You pay the whole thing off in full. You do that for 6 months. You have now built credit the same as you would with a car loan, except you didn't have to like buy anything that you weren't already going to buy. You were already going to buy gas to make your car go, right? And it doesn't have to be gas, it could be anything. I choose gas because it's a boring expense. I have yet to meet the person who's like, ooh, let's go fill up today. Like, I mean, maybe that's you. I don't know. You'd be the first. But it's a boring expense. We want credit cards to be boring. I get asked all the time, oh, Emily, what's the best credit card? The best credit card is the one you're not excited about. Because people sometimes will say, oh, but I love shopping at, XYZ store, so I should probably get the credit card there. No, no, because you're going to get a bunch of advertisements saying, oh, hey, you're a card holder. They're going to build you up. They're going to make you feel real special. You're a card holder. We're going to have an extra sale just for you, card holder, and you're going to feel really special. You're going to spend more money than you would have spent. Remember, the whole point of this is to not spend money that you weren't already going to spend. You want to be building credit in that way. Cool. Any questions on credit building, credit cards, anything like that before we move into our last component here? Cool. Now we can talk about investing, okay? Now we can talk about it. Everybody likes to talk about it. And I think I know why too. It's almost like there's some FOMO around investing. People like you hear it and like you've got one friend who's sort of doing it and it feels real mysterious. And you're like, what is this, guys? Listen, all investing is buying something now that you think is going to be more valuable later. That's it. Buying something now that you think is going to be more valuable later. Now, when we're like younger, maybe you collected baseball cards, or maybe you still collect something where you're like, oh, I think this will be worth a lot of money later. Those are like collectibles that are easier to conceptualize. Like it's easier to understand how like a classic car would become more valuable later. When we invest in stocks and bonds and things like that, sometimes it's trickier to wrap our head around it because it's like not something we can touch and hold and see. But that's where we start to earn money on our money by doing things like that. So I'm going to start off with the most common type of investing, which is retirement. And you might be thinking, but Emily, I am not an old person. I am young and vibrant. Why are you talking to me about this? Because when you're young, that's when we need to talk about it, all right? Because you're not burdened with a million responsibilities yet. So that's when we want to start talking about it. People invest for the long and the short term. The most common type of long-term investing is retirement. So let's look at Jessica and Trevor. They both graduate ASU. They both get great jobs that are eligible for a 401k. Now, not every job is going to have a retirement plan. Sometimes you'll be at a small job or a part-time job that does not have a retirement plan, in which case you're going to want to invest outside of work. But maybe you have a 401k at your job, like Jessica and Trevor do. 401k is just like think of it like a bank account. It's not, but it's like a basket that you can put your retirement money in so that you can invest it somewhere. So Jessica puts $2,000 a year into her 401k. $2,000. She does that till she's 30 and then she stops. Trevor does not do that in his 20s. Trevor is doing what most people do in his 20s, which is like figuring out his life. And then he starts investing when he's 30. Okay. Jessica puts in $18,000. Trevor puts in 72,000 because he does it for longer. Now here's the big old question mark. I don't know how Jessica and Trevor are going to invest their money. I don't know. I don't know what the stock market's going to do. If I was a master of the stock market and I had a crystal ball for there, I'm sorry, I would not be sitting here talking to you guys. I would own an island somewhere and I would be doing that. So what we can do is we can look backwards though and look at averages of the stock market. So if we do that, I can tell you that Jessica, who did not age well, but do not feel bad for her because when Jessica's 66, she could have over $800,000 in that account. That's not bad, Jessica. Look at you, Jessica. If Trevor, distinguished little Trevor, did the same thing, he would have almost $200,000 less. Trevor, not feeling so professional now with your little tie and your collared shirt, are you? All right. Why is that? Because Jessica, by the time Trevor even started, Jessica had had almost a decade of compounding interest, compounding interest, compounding interest. Now, is it going to happen exactly like this? No, maybe not. And I doubt Jessica's investments went up like this. It was probably up and then down and then up and then down again. But over a whole lifetime, when people talk about wealth building, this is what they mean. It's very difficult to save for retirement by just like putting $1 in a piggy bank every day. The vast majority of people who retire, they do it by, yes, saving money, but then letting that money grow. That is how people do it. Okay. Now, where do you put those investments? Just putting money in a 401k in itself is not an investment. That money then has to be invested somewhere. The 401k is like just the car, the basket that you put it in. Then you have to drive it somewhere. Stocks are one of the most commonly understood investments because I think people have an easier time picturing what they are. If you want to start a hamburger fast food chain, you are more than welcome to go do that and raise a bunch of money and buy a bunch of equipment and start a hamburger fast food chain. Or you could buy a piece of McDonald's that already exists. And when McDonald's makes money, you will make money based on, how much more valuable that little piece is that you own. Okay. That's investing in stocks. There's also bonds. Bonds are when you are lending money to like a government or a municipality and they're paying you a return back on that investment. Mutual funds, you'll hear these talked about. A mutual fund is like if an investor, or excuse me, like a fund manager has picked a bunch of investments and put them all together for you. If a stock is a flower, a mutual fund is a bouquet that someone has said, I am an expert at putting this together, and these are the things I'm going to pick, and I'm telling you this is going to look great all together like this. Okay, so there's one fund that you can research and invest in. And then the last one, ETF, exchange traded funds, or sometimes we call them index funds. Very similar. They're kind of like if a stock dressed up as a mutual fund for Halloween. They're kind of similar. They trade like a stock trades. Trading means buying and selling the investment, but they're funds, like they're not just one investment. So if you look at the stock index, the S&P 500, the S&P 500 is what's called a stock index. It's a bunch of stocks all together in a group, and we call that group the S&P 500. So you could pick one stock in the S&P 500 to invest in, or you could invest in an exchange traded fund or an index fund that follows the whole S&P 500. And so if the whole index goes up, then you're going to go up. And if the whole index goes down, you're going to go down. The idea behind it is that your risk is spread out. Like that's why people like index funds, because you're not going to see the same kind of like boom, like aggressive jump that you might see with the stock. I mean, if you bought Amazon when it was just good old Jeffy in his parents' basement, selling some stuff, you would have your own island now, right? Because Amazon has taken off. So you're not going to see that with like an index fund. Index funds move a little less aggressively because it's kind of spread out a little bit more. I think that might be why they are a favorite of uh, new investors, because it's not like picking one stock, it's kind of spreading out your risk. So if you are interested in this and you're looking for something to Google later, that's what I would look at. I would start your Googling there. This isn't investment advice because like I'm not allowed to give you investment advice, but I know that sometimes it's hard to know where to start your Googling quest. So that's what I would start with. And just kind of like, what are low cost, well performing, index funds that are out there. If you want to invest outside of a retirement account, like investing for retirement is actually kind of easy because if you have a job that has that option for you, they make it pretty easy to put money in there and invest it. If you don't have that, you're going to have a broker. That's what we call the middle person, a stockbroker. There's a million of them. You've heard of these companies, guys. They advertise during the Super Bowl. Okay, we meet like Vanguard, Charles Schwab, like Fidelity. Like those are the names. If you've ever wondered, what kind of company is that? That's what it is. It's the kind of company where, like, if you have an account at Charles Schwab, just to use them as an example, you have given them your bank account. And you're like, okay, I have an account with you. I'm going to fund that account with my bank account, and I'm going to tell you that I would like to buy 5 shares of, this investment. Then they do that for you. And if you make money, then your account makes money. And if it loses money, then it loses money. The difference there is you're not getting any kind of tax benefit for saving for retirement. There are lots of tax benefits for saving with a 401k or an IRA, individual retirement account. That's the kind you use if you don't have it through work. Um, there's tax benefits to doing it that way. There are no tax benefits to just having an account that you can put money in and out of. But there's also less restrictions on an account like that. Okay. If you take money out of your retirement account before you retire, there can be penalties on that money for doing that because they're like, dude, we gave you all these tax benefits. You can't just be taking your money out all willy-nilly, right? There's restrictions and things for those kinds of accounts. If you've got money just in a brokerage account that's not tied to retirement, you do have more flexibility on that money. But you're not going to get the tax benefit of saving it for retirement that way. Woo! I've been talking for like a really long time. Sorry about that. Here's what I want to do now. I want to give you my email. Okay. I want to give you my email. And I also want to give you, like, we just scratched the surface today, guys. I'm going to be real with you. We have a YouTube channel. You'll recognize the voice on a lot of the videos. But they're like 2 to 3, unless you hate it, in which case, I don't know, man. I don't know where they got that voiceover lady. I don't know, fire her. But if you go to youtube.com/moneymoments, or that QR code takes you there, we've got like an 8 video budgeting tutorial you can go through. We've got one that drills down on like how to make a credit card payment, just lots of things like that. Check it out. But we've got a few minutes now. What did I miss? Was there anything that you were just like really hoping I was going to cover that I didn't cover, or any burning questions you've ever had about money? You are totally able to follow up with me. Some people think that it's only if you have like a MidFirst Bank account. That's couldn't be further from the truth. This is my job. You have just witnessed my job, helping people with their money. So you as a person qualify to be able to email me with a question. That's how that works. But if you have any now, I could help you now. I'm looking in the chat. I don't see any, but feel free to, I mean, we're a small enough group. If you want to unmute, I'm happy to do that.
While students are thinking on questions, Emily, I just want to say thank you again so much for taking the time to meet with us today. This has been so beneficial, even for me as a professional staff member at ASU. It's a good reminder. And again, I wish I would have had an opportunity like this to listen to while I was going through my undergrad at 18, 20 years old, to understand the importance of budgeting and what that savings account was really for. I tried to listen to my dad, but I failed, I think. But it does look
Well,
like we have a few questions coming in though.
So
Oh, just kidding. It's only on my end because I forgot to open it up to anybody and everybody. So
I was going to say, yeah, because I can't see it.
let me go ahead. I just updated that, everyone. So you are free to ask questions, but I'll go ahead and Emily say a couple of the first ones here.
Okay.
I had someone say, will my credit score be affected if I decide to cancel my credit card or not use it for a long period of time?
That's a great question. So yes and no. If you build credit with a credit card and that is your only loan that you're paying, and then you cancel the card and stop using it, your credit score will likely go down. It's not because when you cancel a card, your score goes down. It's because what you did is you took the only, like you're not doing any credit activities anymore because you canceled that card. So if you had 5 credit cards, or maybe you had a car loan and a student loan and 2 credit cards, and you cancel one of the credit cards, you're probably not going to really notice a difference because you have a lot of credit activities that are keeping up your good behavior. So in that case, it wouldn't really make a difference. But like when we see it is when that's the only loan you have and then you cancel it and stop using it. Yeah, you're probably going to notice a difference. What I always tell people in that example, like if you don't want to use the card anymore, just put like 1 or 2 things on it a month just to keep it active, so that you don't have to worry about it, you know. Great question. What else we got in there, Abby?
One of the other ones was, well, I did have somebody ask if the slideshow or the recording will be available later. The session is being recorded. We do plan to share that out with everyone, but Emily, I'm not sure if you are interested in sharing the actual presentation, but like I said, we do have the recording that folks can watch back.
Yeah, you know what? If and anybody can email me and I can send you whatever slides you're looking for. I just think that tends to work better. So
yeah,
not a problem.
And then one of the other questions was just, again, if you have any car or housing tips that might be beneficial for students, as they might be looking for a new car or might be graduating and it's time to get out of campus housing and starting to look for my own housing, if you have any tips around that.
Yeah, so I would just say with the car, I would say, remember a car is a purchase that you're going to want to keep for 3 to 5 years. So a common mistake I see with car purchases is that you buy the car that's perfect now, and then next year it's not now anymore, and you bought more car than maybe you could afford because we're like right now maybe you don't have a lot of expenses, and maybe maybe your parents are helping you out with stuff or whatever, and then like next year or 2 years from now you have a ton of expenses and you're like, oh shoot, life just got real expensive real quick. And so that's just what I would say with the car is like make sure that this is like a longer term purchase, that you're being conservative with. Remember, you got your whole life to buy your dream car. That's what I tell people. You have your whole life to buy your dream car. It's always easier to upgrade later than downgrade later. So if you go out and buy your dream car right now and you realize you can't afford it, it's going to be a big ego punch to have to drop down a level of car, if you know what I mean. Whereas if you keep driving that cheap car for 5 more years, whatever, and then you're like, hey, now I'm financially stable, that is such a more fun jump than trying to go like, oh man, I overextended myself. And kind of the same thing with housing. I'm so thankful that the stigma of like having a roommate and moving back in with your parents is kind of going away. I cannot say the same 5-10 years ago. It was still like, oh my gosh, live with a roommate. And that's just not the vibe anymore. And I'm so thankful for that. Like, yeah, tons of people live with a roommate. They're like, yeah, are you kidding me? Do I want to pay the whole rent or half the rent? Half the rent, please. That sounds great. And also, the last thing I'll say about that is remember, it's not just the rent that you're paying half of. It's the internet, it's the water, like all that stuff you're splitting. And that annoying roommate, man, becomes so much less annoying when they're paying half your internet. I don't know what to tell you.
Another question that I just got to, Emily, do you have any recommendations or insights on how folks can check their credit score?
Yes. So if you go to annualcreditreport.com, that is like the free government sanctioned way to do it. You go to annualcreditreport.com and you are able to check each credit bureau once a month, or excuse me, once a year for free. They have to show you like everything that they have on you. Okay. Yeah, annualcreditreport.com. Now, there are other places like I know there's apps. One of the most popular ones is Credit Karma that yeah can help track you. Now, the one thing I will say, to just make sure you're not confused about, so the score that most people use when they're pulling your credit is what's called the FICO score. That graph that I showed you is the way that FICO, Fair Isaac Corporation, calculates your credit. It's just like their proprietary formula that they use to calculate your score. Credit Karma does not use the FICO score. It uses what's called a Vantage score, which is shockingly similar to the FICO score. So I just don't want you to see it and go, oh, wait a second, is this checking the wrong thing? I mean, technically it's not the same thing, but for all intents and purposes, it will be giving you very similar information to the extent that people, it tends to be fine for them. So yeah, that's what people typically do. Good questions. I love this. Well, we are just about at time, and I don't want to go over your time and everybody here. So I'll thank you, Abby, and everybody. Thank you so much for hosting me today. I hope we learned something. Please feel free to follow up and have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you so much, Emily. For the group here, just another reminder and plug. I don't know why a thumbs down just went on my face because I don't want a thumbs down. That was great. We do have another workshop next week for working learners or for student employees. We will be having an employer panel. So check out our Work Plus website for more details on that and to get registered for that one. Alina or another Work Plus working learner will also throw a reminder for that event in the Slack channel again. But for everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you have any suggestions or presentations or workshops you'd like to see, reach out, let us know, throw it in the Slack channel, connect with Alina personally, whatever works best for you. But again, thank you all for being here today.